economic, institutional, and fiscal performance of the Cayman Islands using a number of criteria. Our positive ratings is a result of the following key drivers. One, a very high gross domestic product, or GDP per capita, a comparatively low government debt burden, and three, consistent macroeconomic management. I will now briefly explain, Madam Speaker, the significant indicators cited by Moody's that have positively impacted our ratings. On the subject of economic strength, Madam Speaker, Moody's determination of economic strength is reflected in the economy's wealth, size, and structural factors that point to long-term economic robustness and shock absorption capacity. The Cayman Islands' economic strength was rated moderate by Moody's. This is balanced with our limitations as a small island economy that is highly dependent on financial and tourism-related services. However, Moody's note that large-scale projects over the past 5 years have increased the economy's diversification. Another area that Moody's looked at, Madam Speaker, was institutional strength, which reflects the country's governance model, the quality of its institutions, and the predictability of its policies. Moody's ranked the Cayman Islands' institutional strength at AA3, which is only 3 notches below the highest rating possible. Based on the worldwide governance indicators, Madam Speaker, compiled by World Bank Group, Cayman is amongst the highest in the region for institutional strength and ranks in the top 30 percentile of all sovereigns rated by Moody's, including highly developed countries. Moody's credit our relationship with the United Kingdom for enhancing the stability of the government, while also highlighting our long history of policy consensus and a consistent macroeconomic approach. With regards to fiscal strength, Madam Speaker, Moody's defines the fiscal strength of a country based on the overall health of its national government finances, particularly with regards to its debt levels. The fiscal strength of the Cayman Islands was rated as very high, only 1 notch below the highest rating possible. Madam Speaker, the perceived fiscal strength of our government is underscored by our relatively low debt burden, coupled with our commitment to fiscal prudence. The affordable debt burden is also supported by our long history of pegging our currency to the US dollar, which significantly reduces the risk of exchange rate shocks. However, Madam Speaker, I must say that with regards to susceptibility of event risk, the final factor in Moody's credit risk assessment is basically that our event risk, which evaluates our vulnerability to any risk which may severely strain public finances. The Cayman Islands, in this area, event risk is actually rated A. Despite our vulnerability to external shocks given our small, open economy, Moody's considered the inherent resilience of the local economy and the robustness of our institutions. Although hurricanes are a recurrent threat given our geographical location, Moody's note that the relative wealth of the jurisdiction provides a strong buffer. The report also recognizes Cayman's highly stable political environment in the past and the likelihood of a destabilizing event being very small because of the strong institutions and the UK government's oversight. However, Madam Speaker, Moody's note long-term economic risks related to the competitiveness in the Cayman Islands' 2 key industries of tourism and financial services, which could affect government finances. In closing, Madam Speaker, the latest evaluation from Moody's reflects confidence in our country's economic, fiscal, and institutional strength. However, it also challenges us as responsible stakeholders to ensure that these accomplishments are maintained for the benefit of all Caymanians. Despite Cayman's high GDP per capita and fiscal strength, we cannot become complacent. We must remain committed to ensuring that our debt burden remains very low and affordable, while constantly looking for opportunities and developments that can diversify and grow our economy for the benefit of all Caymanians. Madam Speaker, I thank you.
Cayman Islands Government Unaudited Quarterly Financial Report, 9-month period ended 30th of September 2022, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker. Sorry, which one this was again? Unaudited? Okay. There's so much of these in the front. Let me just move this over. Okay, sorry. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the unaudited quarterly financial report for the core government of the Cayman Islands for the 9-month period ending 30th of September 2022.
Does the Honorable Deputy Premier wish to speak there too?
Yes, Madam Speaker, briefly. Which one? That's the unaudited for the 9 months. I don't know, this one. There you go. All right, that takes one back. Madam Speaker, on the 11th of November 2022, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development arranged for the gazettal of the unaudited quarterly financial report for the core government of the Cayman Islands for the period. The gazettal of 11th of November satisfied 6 weeks after the end of the quarter deadline specified in the Act. Madam Speaker, the information referred hereto is based on records obtained from the General Ledger of the government's financial management system on the 10th of October 2022. It is also based on representation and judgments provided by chief financial officers of ministries, portfolios, offices, and of statutory authorities and government companies, or otherwise known as SAGC. Madam Speaker, all of the amounts that I will provide from this point onwards are stated in Cayman Islands dollars. The Statement of Financial Position as of the 30th of September 2022 on page 14 of the document shows that the core government ended the period with $3.3 billion in total assets, $1.2 billion in total liabilities, and therefore with a $2.1 billion in net assets or net worth. Madam Speaker, cash and cash equivalent, which includes fixed deposits with maturity durations not exceeding 90 days, were $351.1 million, and marketable securities, which are all comprised of fixed deposits with maturity durations exceeding 90 days, were $42.6 million, for a total of $393.7 million with respect to bank account balances. Due to the significant cash balances on hand, the government continues to place funds on longer-term fixed deposits in order to maximize interest income for the government. These longer-term deposits are shown as marketable securities on the Statement of Financial Position and are not included in the definition of cash and cash equivalents. That is a separate classification shown on the Statement of Financial Position, which only represent deposits that are 90 days or less to maturity. Other marketable securities, Madam Speaker, which consist of U.S. government treasury notes purchased on the 28th of June, were CI $280.5 million, or the equivalent of US $338 million. The public debt for the core government stood at $524.4 million at 30th of September 2022. This was $289.3 million more than the debt balance at the 30th of September 2021. The debt balance increased as a result of the loan drawdown of $393 million of standby line of credit. The statement of financial performance for the period, Madam Speaker, shown on page 7 of the document, indicates that core government earned total operating revenue of $818 million and incurred total operating expenditure of $720.9 million. The resulting operating surplus for core government was $97.1 million at the end of September. Madam Speaker, SAGCs posted a collected deficit of $15.2 million for the period, and thus the entire public sector had an operating surplus of $81.9 million for the period, which was 49.8% ahead of surplus projections for the period. Madam Speaker, revenues recorded for the period of $818 million were $53.9 million ahead of budget projections. This positive variance was mainly concentrated in the category of coercive revenue, which are revenues received by government by virtue of coercive powers of certain acts. Coercive revenues was $44.4 million greater than budgeted expectation for the period and $23.9 million greater than the period year-to-date actual revenues. The positive variance, Madam Speaker, was largely attributed to financial services collected by financial services fees collected by SEMA for government, which was $6.2 million better than budget, and that was actually made up from license fees from mutual fund administrators, which was $4.4 million better than budget, and private fund fees, which was $4.43 million better than budget, and securities and investment business license, unfortunately, Madam Speaker, was actually $1.5 million less than what we expected. Work permit revenues, Madam Speaker, were $11.6 million better than budget, which would represent an increased demand for workers as the economy moved beyond phase 5 of the border reopening plan and a stronger economic performance than expected. And of course, Madam Speaker, property-related revenues, which is pretty much related to stamp duty, was $18 million ahead of expected revenues for the period. These positive variants from the budget expectations were partially offset by negative variance in other areas of revenue category. And those areas directly, Madam Speaker, was import duty revenues, which were $15.2 million less than budget, and also tourism-related revenues were only $500,000 below budget projections for the period. Madam Speaker, I want to pause here a little bit and just to kind of make a note that the government did expect import duties to be a little bit behind budget, primarily for two reasons. One, when we approved the budget, we actually, on the customs-related, we did it on a linear timeline where we basically took the total amount and we divided it across the 12 months. But what history have shown, Madam Speaker, is that the first 6 months of the year, the government collects 45% of customs revenue, and the remaining 6 months of the year is where the 55% of the revenues has come in. And I can say that based on the numbers that we're seeing at October, that is reflective of past performance. And then also, Madam Speaker, it should be noted that we did expect the negative variance of the fact that the government also went out and removed duties on certain items after we had prepared the budget with regard to a lot of essential family items, such as baby food, baby formula, and sanitary napkins and so forth. So we expected anywhere from roughly $3 to $4 million of revenues related to that would have been foregone this year. And Madam Speaker, with regards to tourism-related revenues, I must say that because of the late reopening in the tourism industry, as because of the Omicron variant that was there earlier in the year and everything else, we missed out on some of the revenues that we would have normally expected to get from cruise. And typically, those are the port fees that comes in, and those numbers are just those numbers. When you miss them, you can't get them back. But what I can say, Madam Speaker, is that if it wasn't for the increase in tourism accommodation tax and the high numbers that we're seeing in tourism, again, thanks to the Minister and his team for what it is that they have been doing in that regard, that variance would have been much higher. And while, Madam Speaker, I am reporting on only the results for September, what I can say is that for the month of October, the government expectation from tourism-related revenues actually surpassed budget for the first time at the end of October. And that was actually driven by 2.4 million better in tourism accommodation tax, which actually offset what it is that we expected or we lost on cruise tourism. So I really want to publicly thank the Minister of Tourism and his team for the efforts that they have done in this endeavor, because I can honestly say, when we saw the late opening and the late start, we were a little bit worried about those numbers being met, and I generally want to thank the Minister for allowing me to sleep better at night in terms of making back up the shortfall. Madam Speaker, expenses incurred for the period ending September was $720.9 million, which was actually $37.8 million higher than the original budget that we had presented in this honorable Parliament. And that those areas, Madam Speaker, that really increased the negative variance was pretty much the transfer payments, because as you know, we paid this stipend much longer than we had budgeted for. And again, that was because of the late reopening that we expected. And also NGS 55, which is pretty much an healthcare cost. What I can say in a nutshell, Madam Speaker, is that the negative variance was a result of us taking care of our people and helping our people, and it was nothing else. Because the good news is, and I want to publicly thank the Deputy Governor and his team, is that they were actually able to offset those overspend by savings in personnel costs, which was $19.3 million better than budget, and supplies and consumable, which was $13.7 million better than budget. So again, those savings was one of the primary reasons why the negative variance in expenditure wasn't as bad as it could have been. Madam Speaker, as honorable members will know, the initial budget for 2022 financial year was approved in Parliament on the 8th of December 2021. It is important that I make it clear, absolutely clear, that although I've spoken of budgets being overspent, this is a reference to initial budget estimates for the 2022 financial year, which was passed in December 2021, and government has obtained the required approvals in 2022 to spend at levels greater than those that were initially budgeted, which those approvals, Madam Speaker, either came from Finance Committee in March and June and October, and from Cabinet via Section 11.5 of the Act at various dates in 2022. So, Madam Speaker, in short, the proper authority for the occurrence or the incurrence of amounts that has led to the description of overspending, because the description relates to a position that has been superseded by changes made during 2022, and as I said, all necessary approval was obtained, whether it be by Cabinet or rather by Finance Committee. Madam Speaker, costs relating to personnel for the period amounted to $300.7 million, which reflects an underspend on personnel costs of $19.3 million, which was 6% of the initial budget projection for these costs for the 9-month period. The favorable variance is a result of several ministries and portfolios having vacant posts which the 3rd of September 2022 remain unfilled. And Madam Speaker, I want to pause at this point and recognize that within the civil service and within the government as a whole, there was a mindset of having all hands on deck. And as a result of some vacancies, some members, a good amount of members within our public service, actually stepped up, worked longer hours, spent more time away from their families, because you do not get these kind of underspend without other people making sacrifices. And the government recognized that when we had to pay the tourism stipend much longer than anticipated, where it is that we could have saved money in order to help our people. And again, I really want to publicly thank the Deputy Governor, the chief officers, and everyone for really stepping up to the plate and allowing us where they're only spending things that are really compelling and justifiable. Thus the reason we have such a large variance, a positive variance, I should say, in not only personnel costs, but also supplies and consumables. So that is not something that is lost on the government as a whole. Madam Speaker, the only other thing I just want to pretty much highlight is that we had a loan facility that we made available to the Cayman Islands Airport Authority and basically the Turtle Farm during the 2022 financial year, and which was $18.1 million and $8.8 million respectively. the government made the decision that rather than have these SAGCs go out and borrow money at high interest rate, that the government would have loaned these entities basically money at very, very favorable rate. So I think like for the first 2 years, they're paying 0% interest, because at the end of the day, it is the public's money, and we want to slice it and dice it, or the term I would normally use in my colleagues, spaghetti around the plate. And it makes no use for us to go out and have someone borrow money from a bank when the government has excess cash on hand to basically help other government entities. Madam Speaker, in closing, the overall fiscal performance reported for the period shows a core government operating surplus of 97.1 million, which is 16 million or 19.7% greater than the budget expectations for the period. The SAGC suffered a combined deficit for the period of 15.2 million, which meant that when the small deficit from the SAGC is combined with the material surplus by central government, the entire public sector achieved a surplus of 81.9 million, or 49.8% above of the head of the EPS surplus projection for the period. The government's cash position ended 393.7 million for the period, which is 165 of that. 165.8 million of that was held in reserve and restricted deposits, and 227.9 million as operating bank account balances. Madam Speaker, I just want to pause there again and just to make a note that the government made the decision to draw down on the standby loan facility that was put in place by the previous government, which had fixed a borrowing rate of 3.25% for 15 years. And the government expected that there would have been rising interest rate costs, and as everyone has seen where prime has gone. So in essence, we basically put the money down, Madam Speaker, borrowed it, and then we basically went out and bought U.S. Treasury securities. At the time, the rate was around 2.8%. So the real carrying cost of what it is that we took is that we were paying 3.25%, but we reinvested it at 2.8%. So in essence, the carrying cost is less than 0.5% in terms of the overall. And again, that is also something that doesn't stand by, because those securities are easily convertible if needs be. But we don't think at this point that we'll need to. And we basically bought them to mature to the end of June next year, thereabouts, Madam Speaker. So again, we have that additional cash to call on if the need ever arises. And the government, again, made that decision, living in a hurricane belt, just in case anything pop up, at least we know we would have had resources and reserves enough to satisfy any emergency or any contingency. But by the grace of God, again, Madam Speaker, the government was seen through, or the country was seen through, with no major impacts this financial year. So I really want to thank God for his continued grace and blessing on the Cayman Islands. Madam Speaker, I am pleased with the government's financial performance for the past 9 months of the year, reinforcing the PAC's government's commitment to maintaining fiscal prudence and improving government's financial position as we recover from the effects of the global COVID-19 pandemic and deal with rising global inflation and other international economic pressures. The third quarter performance of 2022 has favorable position the government for the remainder of the year, assuming the remainder of the year does not perform different to budget expectations. We are well aware of the continued fiscal discipline and ongoing monitoring of public finances are absolutely critical and necessary. More so now with the impending economic challenges which many economists predict within the next year. The unaudited quarterly financial report for the core government of the Cayman Islands for the 9-month period ended 30th of September 2022 is available on the Ministry of Finance and Economic and Development website, www.gov.ky/finance, and it was gazetted on the 11th of November 2022. And I want to thank all of my colleagues and the wider civil service for putting up with me during the period of time and all the emails and all the pushbacks and everything that what it is we're doing. But again, this is a collective effort and it could not have been achieved without all hands on deck. And again, I want the public to thank my honorable colleagues in that regard, the Premier and all the ministers, parliamentary secretaries, and also the Deputy Governor and the wider civil service for their efforts in this regard. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Cayman Islands Government Plan and Estimates, second supplementary plan and estimates for the financial year, 1st of January to 31st of December 2020. Cayman Islands Government Plan and Estimates, first supplementary plan and estimates for the financial year, 1st of January to the 31st of December 2021, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, sorry again, the stack of papers here. Yep. Yep. I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the 2020 supplementary plan and estimates for the Government of the Caymans for the financial year ended 2020 and also for the financial year ended 2021.
Does the Honourable Deputy Premier wish to speak?
Briefly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Standing Order 67-1, the 2020 Supplementary Plan and Estimates document that has been laid stands referred to Finance Committee and also for 2021. As these estimates will be considered in the Finance Committee at the conclusion of the second reading of the associated Supplementary Appropriation Bill that is further down on the order paper, I wish to make brief remarks with respect to the table documents. Madam Speaker, the 2020 Supplementary Plan and Estimates document that has just been structured is structured in the following way. Section A of the document shows in respect of the specific appropriations being changed the following information: the amount of the original approved appropriation for a particular budget item, the amount of supplementary appropriation proposed for a particular budget item, and the revised appropriation amount for a particular budget item. Section B of the document shows the financial statements for the financial year ended 31st of December 2020 and 31st of December 2020 and the 31st of December 2021. Madam Speaker, honourable members should use the supplementary plan and estimates as a document that provides more information to each of the items in the schedule of the Supplementary Appropriation Bill for the 2020 financial year and the 2021 financial year. And as I noted before, those bills appear further down on the order paper. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Cayman Islands Government, entire public sector annual report for the 18-month period ending the 31st of December 2017. Cayman Islands Government, entire public sector accounts annual report for the financial year ending 31st of December 2018, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, I wish to lay on the table of this Honourable Parliament the entire public sector annual report for the 18-month period ending 31st of December 2017 and also for the 12-month period ending 31st of December 2018.
Does the Honourable Member wish to speak?
Just to say thanks to my finance team, Madam Speaker, for getting all of those work done, and also all the different entities, including the Auditor General, for the work that they have done. These are related to 2017 and 2018 before this government came, but it's just part of the exercise to make sure that we get everything compliant with the law. So pretty much, Madam Speaker, no.
Cayman Islands Government Plan and Estimates for 2022 financial year, 1st of January to 31st of December 2022. Cayman Islands Government Budget Statements. Cayman Islands Government Purchase Agreement for 2022 financial year, 1st of January to the 31st of December 2022 for 2023 financial year. Cayman Islands Government Ownership Agreements for 2022 financial year, 1st of January to the 31st of December 2022, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honourable Deputy Premier.
There's definitely more than this. Madam Speaker, thank you very much. On behalf of the government, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the finalized budget documents for the financial years ending 31st of December 2022 and 31st of December 2023.
Does the Honourable Member wish to speak?
Briefly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the documents that are being tabled, and again because of the size of it, is actually several documents. Madam Clerk, I'll just read out the documents. It'll be easier also for the, your team. These documents, Madam Speaker, is the Cayman Islands Government Plan and Estimates for the 2022 financial year, 1st of January to the 31st of December 2022, and for 2023, the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2023. It also includes, Madam Speaker, the Cayman Islands Government Budget Statements for the House of Parliament, Portfolio of the Civil Service, Portfolio of Legal Affairs, Office of the Director of Public Prosecution, Judicial Administration, Office of the Commissioner of Police, Office of the Ombudsman for the 2022 financial year, 1st of January to 31st of December 2022, and also for the 1st of January to 31st of December 2023. The documents also include, Madam Speaker, the Cayman Islands Government Budget Statements for the Cabinet Office, Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency, Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, Ministry of Border Control, and those again, Madam Speaker, is for the 2022 financial year, 1st of December to 31st of December, 1st of January to the 31st of December 2022, and also for the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2023. Madam Speaker, also included is the Cayman Islands Government Budget Statements for the Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Youth, Sports, Culture and Heritage, Ministry of Financial Services and Commerce, Ministry of Investment, Innovation and Social Development, Ministry of Education, Ministry of District Administrations and Land, and again, Madam Speaker, those are for the period 2022 starting the 1st of January to the 31st of December, and also for the budget year 2023, which runs from the 1st of January to the 31st of December 2023. Also included, Madam Speaker, is the Cayman Islands Government Budget Statements for the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure, Ministry of Tourism and Transport, Ministry of Health and Wellness for 2022 and 2023. And again, those are for the years for the period 1st of January 2022 to the 31st of December 2022, and also for the 1st of January 2023 to the 31st of December 2023. And it also includes, Madam Speaker, the Cayman Islands Government Purchase Agreements for the 2022 and 2023 financial years, and it also includes the Cayman Islands Government Ownership Agreements for 2022 and 2023. And that's the stack right there, Madam Speaker. It was just too much to have gone through the process, but members would have seen those are the finalized budgets. Just to make note, Madam Speaker, and members of this Honourable Parliament and the public would be aware that during the Finance Committee, as with anything else, there are times when some members would have some changes on the floor where some things would have been increased or decreased, or sometimes we pick up different errors along the way, certain commas, certain typos. So that is now the finalized budget for everything that has been approved for both 2022 and 2023 coming out of the Finance Committee that we had last year, December. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Cayman Islands Development Bank Annual Report for the year ended December 31st, 2021, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of Parliament the annual report for the Cayman Islands Development Bank, which is commonly referred to as CIDB, for the year ended the 31st of December 2021.
Does the Honourable Member wish to speak?
Briefly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Office of the Auditor General issued an unqualified or cleaner audit opinion on the financial statements for the CIDB for the 2021 year. The Auditor General also included an emphasis of matter paragraph in her opinion. However, this does not change the unqualified or clean audit opinion issued. The purpose of the emphasis of matter, Madam Speaker, is to draw attention to the following. CIDB is significantly reliant on continued government support in the form of proceeds from capital injections in order to meet its obligation and sustain its operational expenditures. And 34% or $6 million, excluding allowances for credit losses of the overall loan portfolio of CIDB, is impaired. Madam Speaker, during the 2021 financial year, CIDB approved 76 new loans, inclusive of restructures and existing loan disbursement, totaling $900,000. As of the 31st of December 2021, CIDB's loan portfolio stood at $17.1 million, prior to a loan loss provision of $700,000. This is a decrease of 11% when compared to the loan portfolio for the prior year, ended 31st of December 2020. As disclosed in Note 6 of the financial statement, the majority of the loan portfolio is comprised of mortgages, $6.9 million, business loans, $2 million, student loans, $2.2 million, and debt consolidation, $2.5 million. Madam Speaker, delinquent loans continue to decrease and fell to 34%, totaling $6 million as of the 31st of December 2021. This is compared to 35.5% or $7.4 million from the previous year. As of the 31st of December 2021, the total assets of CIDB stood at $47.3 million, which is $1.5 million comprised of cash and fixed deposits. Overall, total liabilities increased by $1.1 million, primarily due to $7.6 million that CIDB held on behalf of the Ministry of Education Scholarship Fund. CIDB's long-term loan facility with First Caribbean International Bank stood at $7.6 million, which is down from $11.6 million in the previous year. Madam Speaker, CIDB incurred a net loss of $300,000 after earning $1.7 million in net income from operations and incurring $2 million in administrative expenses. CIDB had no known contingent liabilities as of the 31st of December 2021. Madam Speaker, I just want to pause here and just make a note that you notice I mentioned for the 2021 year that CIDB actually did issue 76 loans for $900,000. While I recognize that this is tabling the 2021 results, I can safely say to honored members of this House that CIDB for this year set out to lend around $15 million. And what I can say, Madam Speaker, at the time of right now, that entire amount was completely lent. So much so that the government is now getting ready to inject additional, well, actually about last week, we dispersed $2.2 million of the equity injections for CIDB, and we're actually getting ready to send over in early next year the other $4.5 million that was approved by Finance Committee. Well, Madam Speaker, I just want to take a note right here because I'm actually having a meeting with the CIDB Board of Directors next week to impress upon them the need to put something in place for our senior citizens. Madam Speaker, around 3 weeks ago, I received a call that really disturbed me. a lady with a balance of $58,000 on her loan and with a property valued at $700,000. With the rise in interest rates, that she could not afford to make those payments. And when she reached out to the bank to restructure her loan in a manner that would give her a payments that she can now afford because of the inflationary pressures and everything else, she would have to work an additional 3 years past her expected retirement date. Madam Speaker, from a banking standpoint, $58,000 balance on a $700,000 property makes the loan to value very, very low, and in a sense what the banks would refer to as low risk. The lady is this close to paying off her mortgage, and as such I will be impressing on the board of directors of CIDB to set aside at least $2 million of the funds to look at people, our seniors, and to see what it is that we can help them, and also without the reduced interest rates. It is unfair that people have worked this long and due to no faults of their own, other than the fact that just about all global currencies are pegged to the US dollar, and the US has decided to export inflation to every country around the world. And I say this to say, Madam Speaker, that every country in their own sovereign right can do what it is as they please in terms of their own domestic economy. But I want members to think about this. Before, in the last 2 years, the total amount of US dollars in circulation, or rather was printed, went from 4 trillion to 20 trillion. $16 trillion were basically printed in a 2-year period. And when you have this much cash or money out there in people's pocket, which drives up demand, and when demand increases, price increases, and still struggling with global supply issues and the war in Ukraine and everything, it makes a challenging time. And we do recognize that a lot of our people are hurting. Younger families have the ability to refinance out and probably can help themselves in some ways. But for our seniors who are very close to retirement and looking forward to enjoying the golden years, it'll be difficult for them to refinance up to the age of 70. And that is why I'll be impressing on the CIDB Board of Directors to set aside money, particular to help with our seniors who, again, would have been close to paying off their mortgage. And again, through to no fault of their own, other than the fact that the Federal Reserve of the U.S. have been raising interest rates like crazy. They don't have the luxury that some of us younger folks would have to go to the bank and say, well, let us push this off and then hopefully things get better in the next, short to medium term, that we can probably make adjustments. They don't have that luxury. And if all goes well, it is my intention to seek from my colleagues and with the support of the opposition additional funds that we can use to help our seniors and people within this country. But again, this is from no fault of their own, so I just needed to put that out there. Madam Speaker, in closing, I just really want to thank, and the government wants to also thank its gratitude to the CIDB Board of Directors for their assistance, and I must really single out Chairman Mark Scotland and the board that he is working with and the work that they have been doing, because I can tell you, I get a call from Mark almost every other 2 or 3 days, so very active, the board is working, and I am very pleased with what it is that they're doing, and I love the fact that their heart is in the right place. And to go from lending $900,000 1 year to $15 million the next year shows exactly how involved they are. So I really and truly want to thank everyone for that. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Mercer March benefits, actuarial valuation report as of the December 31st, 2021, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Minister of Finance and Economic Development.
The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the government, I beg to lay on the table of this Honorable House the Post-Retirement Health Care Program Actuarial Valuation Report as of the 31st of December, 2021.
Does the Honorable Deputy Premier wish to speak?
Madam Speaker, briefly. Madam Speaker, the government provides health care benefits to civil servants, pensioners, indigents, seamen, and veterans. As of the 30th of September 2020, 3,936 persons were receiving health care benefits, including hospital and physician services, home health care, prescription drugs therapy, medical equipment, and vision and dental care. Each person, Madam Speaker, has a lifetime benefit of $5 million. Madam Speaker, on the 13th of April 2022, Mercer Marsh Benefits issued a report on the actual valuation of the government's post-retirement health care liability and costs as of the 31st of December 2021. Based on a number of economic and demographic assumptions, data provided by the government, and the benefits of the program, as of the 31st of December 2021, the actuary estimated the government's post-retirement health care liability and costs to be $2.218 billion and $185.583 million, respectively. The fundamental accounting principle of accrual means that, in addition to the salaries and wages that are paid out annually to its employees in any given financial year, government should also recognize or accrue in the same financial year for the cost of the future benefit an employee earns as a result of providing employment services to the government in the same financial year. These costs are real and reflect the true cost to the government for the post-retirement health care benefits its employees, pensioners, seamen, and veterans currently enjoy. Madam Speaker, although the liability would only become due and payable in future years, the actual cost of providing for the future benefits should be recognized over the period that the employee is rendering the service that will ultimately give rise to those benefits. Madam Speaker, I want to briefly speak to the accounting treatment of the post-retirement health care liability and costs. Madam Speaker, in accordance with Section 25 of Schedule 6 of the Public Management and Finance Act and the government's adopted accounting standards, which is International Public Sector Accounting Standards, the post-retirement health care liability of $2.218 billion and a cost of $185.583 million should be recognized on the face of government's primary financial statements, otherwise known as the Statement of Financial Position or the balance sheet, and the Statement of Financial Performance, also known as the income statement. At present, the government does not account for these matters on the face of its primary financial statement, but instead details are provided in a note to the primary financial statement. Madam Speaker, previous governments, however, have chosen to not recognize the liability and full costs as it would put the government at risk of breaching the principles of responsible financial management, in particular the operating surplus and net worth ratios. Breaching the principles require the government to seek written approval from the Foreign Commonwealth Development Office to undertake a number of financial transactions, including borrowing or proceeding with projects with a lifetime value of more than $10 million. Perhaps the most fundamental reason why the Auditor General has issued an adverse audit opinion on the entire public sector financial statement is the non-recognition of the post-retirement health care liability and full costs. An adverse audit opinion signifies the financial statements are materially misstated and do not conform to the government's adopted accounting standards. Madam Speaker, the PAC government is willing to consider the recognition of post-retirement health care liability and full costs on the face of the entire public sector's financial statement, but it would like to discuss the economic and demographic assumptions with the actuary, with the objective of trying to ascertain whether there are ways and means of reducing the liability and costs involved without causing any significant reduction in benefits that our persons are supposed to be receiving over the lifetime. Madam Speaker, one of the things that jumped out on the actual actuary, and I am sure the leader of the opposition will probably appreciate this. If you look on A3, page A3, I think it is, if memory serves me right. B1, sorry. Yeah, on page A3. One of the things that had really jumped out, and this is why I said that we need to have that active discussion with the actuaries to really look at their assumptions, because we know it's for the 2020 financial year. The effect of changes in demographic assumptions actually change by roughly $409,775,000. And I would really and truly like to see or get a better understanding of what assumptions would have resulted in such a large material change. I do recognize that there may be some data, maybe that we need to provide more, but as the government looks at its own current costs that we have right now, and I think those costs are actually recorded in vote SIN2 or output SIN2, which would have been approved by Finance Committee, we're spending roughly 36 million on over 2,000 retirees that we have at this point. So the question that we basically was having for ourselves that we're trying to understand, if we even take 4,000 now and carry them out into the future, a number of 185 million seems quite high if 2,000 is now running 35, 36. And I think where the adjustment need to be looked at, and again, this is just my personal opinion, Madam Speaker, is that while we recognize that this report looks at everything at an arm's length transaction, it does not factor in the fact that the government also has its own hospital. So it's the same as, you having a car, Madam Speaker, and while you may recognize certain warranties, if you actually are a mechanic or you actually have a garage and you can do the reduced cost, there has to be some factoring for that. And we believe that that is one area of discussion that we need to probably look at with the actuaries and then get this thing bedded down, I guess, once and for all, so that we can be fully compliant and not have an adverse opinion from the Auditor General. I'd have liked to have just got up and just, report it without saying anything, but that would be inconsistent with the principles of the PAC government for transparency. So I just had to put it out there, and I know, what it means, but at the end of the day, this is what this government is committed to put all information out there, good and bad. So thank you, Madam Speaker.
Report and recommendation of the Minister responsible for lands on the vesting of Crown Land, Block 1D, Parcel 87, to Dominic Henry and/or Martha Hurlston, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Minister of District Administration and Lands.
The Honourable Minister of District Administration and Lands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is my report recommending the vesting of Crown Land at Registration Section West Bay, Northwest Block 1D, Parcel 87, to Dominic Henry and/or Martha Hurlston, in accordance with Section 10(1)(b) of the said Act. It will be accompanied by the documents required pursuant to Section 10(2) of the said Act, which contains the details of the proposed vesting. I hereby beg your indulgence and permission to lay on the table of this Honourable House this said report.
Does the Honourable Minister wish to speak thereto?
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I seek the permission to continue by way of remarks by providing members with some background whereby the Crown purchased the subject parcel of a 0.7 acres in the year 2000 for the sum of 60,000 Cayman Islands dollars, specifically to enable Donna Marley Hurlston and her family to remain in occupation of a family residence already located there. The Hurlston family claimed to have purchased the property in 1989, but failed to register the transfer. Madam Speaker, the family had faced eviction when the registered owners attempted to sell the parcel to a third party in 1999, at which point the family had realized it was not the registered owner. The government stepped in and purchased the land, allowing the family to remain in occupation under a peppercorn tenancy. Following a tragic incident on the site in 2009, the tenant relocated and the house was demolished. Madam Speaker, Ms. Martha Hurlston began to reoccupy the parcel in 2017 without the landowner's consent. The planning enforcement officer served notice on the Crown as the landowner in light of the lack of the planning consent for the structure that was illegally erected on the property by the occupiers. Madam Speaker, under the threat of eviction, Ms. Hurlston maintains the Hurlston family are the rightful owners of the parcel, as it previously indicated since 1989. A good friend of Ms. Hurlston, Ms. Dominique Henry, offered to purchase the parcel from the Crown for market value. She wishes to do so in an effort to enable her friend to continue to live on the said parcel in West Bay. In accordance with Section 10.2 of the Governor Vesting of Lands Act 2005 revision, 3 valuations were commissioned for this property, 1 from the government's Land and Survey Department and 2 from private sector property valuation companies. The 3 opinions of value are as follows. Lands and Survey, CI 122,000 Cayman Island dollars, Bold 128,000 Cayman Island dollars, Blue Point 183,000 Cayman Island dollars. Madam Speaker, a report on the matter was considered by Cabinet. After careful analysis and due consideration of the reports provided, it was resolved by the Cabinet to advise His Excellency the Governor to approve the sale of this Crown property, Block 1D, Parcel 87, to Ms. Dominique Hendry and Ms. Martha Hurlston for a consideration of $144,333. The figure represents, Madam Speaker, an average of the 3 valuation opinions. Stamp duty is not to be waived. I hereby confirm, Madam Speaker, as required by the said Act, the details of this land matter have been published in the Cayman Islands Gazette, issue number 21 of 2021, dated the 11th day of October 2021, in a local newspaper, namely the Caymanian Times, on the 24th of September 2021. In summary, Madam Speaker, the vesting of Crown land, Block 1D, Parcel 87, is proposed and indeed recommended on the following terms. The vendor being the Governor of the Cayman Islands, purchaser Dominic Henry and Martha Hurlston, property 1D, Parcel 87, area is 0.7 of an acre, consideration $144,333 Cayman Islands dollars, the cost, each party to bear its own respective costs, stamp duty not to be waived. Accompanying this report, as indicated, Madam Speaker, are all the documents required by virtue of Section 10.2 of the Governor Vesting Lands Act 2025 revisions, including all of the valuation reports. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Office of the Auditor General, Cayman Islands, review of the procurement of the lateral flow test, March 2022, to be laid on the table by the Chairman of the Standing Public Accounts Committee.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House report from the Office of the Auditor General entitled Review of the Procurement of Lateral Flow Test, March 2022.
Does the Honourable Leader wish to speak?
Briefly, Madam Speaker, just to mention that the report was prepared at the request of the Cabinet. It was quite specific. The Auditor General was asked to look into it and answer 2 specific questions. So it is a factual report, and she made, I think, 3 recommendations in regards to it. Beyond that, Madam Speaker, there's nothing further I can add.
(2021) Annual Report, Public Service Pension Board, to be laid on the table by the Honourable Deputy Governor.
The Honourable Deputy Governor.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I beg to lay on the table of this Honourable House the 2021 Annual Report for the Public Service Pension Board.
Does the Honourable Deputy Governor wish to speak?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Madam Speaker, it's my pleasure to to briefly speak to the Public Service Pension Board, PSPB, performance during 2021 and to share some key highlights. The PSPB manages three distinct plans: the Public Service Pension Plan, the Parliamentary Pensions Plan, and the Judicial Pensions Plan. Additionally, it administers ex gratia pension payments, which are directly funded by the government. During 2021, key investment milestones were as follows. The return on the PSB fund was 13.1%. As of 31st of December 2021, the PSPB had US $1.36 billion in assets, and the PSB fund saw growth of US $157 million. In terms of administrative milestones, the PSPB processed 3,381 plan member files, conducted 4,144 one-on-one meetings with members, processed 166 new retirements, and delivered 20 presentations to 414 members. Madam Speaker, I would also like to highlight that despite the ongoing challenges of the COVID-19 pandemic that continued last year, on the 1st of October 2021, the PSPB implemented a new customizable pension administrative system that was delivered on time and under budget. This new system is already enhancing member services, and new opportunities are growing from this system's launch. Additionally, the PSPB administered over 1,000 ex gratia and ex gratia uplift payments on monthly basis through 2021. And further to that, over the past year, the PSPB has supported the government by facilitating two one-time payments to pensioners. This included the 150 per pensioner payment in December 2021, and earlier this year, the $450 per pensioner payment to address inflation. Madam Speaker, the last few years have had global investment uncertainty and significant challenges. In 2021, the PSPB responded again in a successful manner with a double-digit investment return. It is noted that 2022 has brought forward new market and investment challenges with inflation pressures, increasing interest rates, and trends in global investment market decreases. Despite the circumstances of 2022, I'm pleased to note that the expertise of the Board of Directors for PSPB that make oversight and risk mitigation a priority to ensure that the PSPB fund is managed during this change in the investment market. Madam Speaker, in these times, the PSPB has still been able to provide secure retirement income to so many Caymanians, and specifically in 2021, a total of 166 new retirees. This was possible for these new retirees as there has been a consistent outlook for their pending retirement, as the PSPB utilizes a quarterly credited rate of return. This quarterly return is calculated using the previous 3 years of returns, and then this rate is applied to members' accounts with the resulting smoothing in the market volatility and allowing Caymanians to plan for their retirement without major fluctuations. Further, the PSPB fund holds a diverse portfolio of bonds and equity securities that over the long term provides above average returns with minimized variability. Madam Speaker, during these recent times, it is these approaches that shows that the PSPB is well positioned to meet the demands of challenging times. In addition to the noteworthy accomplishments that I've highlighted, the PSPB prepared their financial statements for the year end 31st of December 2021 and submitted them to the Auditor General, who issued an unqualified opinion. Madam Speaker, having provided you with these key highlights, I'm certain that you will agree that the PSPB's performance, both operationally and financially, was indeed a success in 2021. That said, I feel confident that the PSPB is ready to address new challenges and concerns that come forward. I would like to thank the PSPB Chief Executive Officer, Ms. Jewel Evans-Lindsay, and her team, and Chairperson, Ms. Sherry Ebanks, and other distinguished members of the Board of Directors for their sound leadership and ongoing commitment to Caymanians, especially those who are members of the Public Service Pension Board. Thank you, Madam Speaker. That's right. Yeah, and I want to congratulate the board on their 30th anniversary as well. Yes, DP reminded me. Madam Speaker, I think we have much to be proud of the performance of this Public Service Pension Board, and I do want to, like I said, record my thanks to the Chief Executive Officer, her staff, and the board for their outstanding performance. Thank you.
Annual report, Anti-Corruption Commission, Cayman Islands, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Attorney General.
The Honorable Attorney General.
Executive Summary of the Anti-Corruption Commission 2021-2022 Annual Report, to be laid on the table by the Honorable Attorney General.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, seek leave of this House to lay on the table the report of the Anti-Corruption Commission, and our report for the period 2021-22, together with an executive summary covering the same period. Seek the leave of the House to lay them together, Madam Speaker.
Does the Honorable Attorney General wish to speak?
Madam Speaker, just to highlight the fact that during the reporting period, the following persons were members of the commission. Ms. Sophia Ann Harris was chairman, Mrs. K.D. Petney, Mr. Kenrick Hall, Mr. Adrian Gus Pope, Mr. Simon Wicker, Mr. Ben Turner, who served from the 15th of March to the 20th of May 2022. And since then, Madam Speaker, there have been some changes, and so the current membership comprises Mr. Adrian Pope as chairman, Mr. Kenrick Hall, Mr. Simon Wicker, Mr. Lawrence Yolfi, Ms. Kendra Foster, Mr. Romeo Frederick, and Mr. Charles Jennings. Madam Speaker, just want to, on behalf of government, to say thanks to the members for their service on the Anti-Corruption Commission. I thank you.
Questions to Honourable Ministers and members of the Cabinet?
Madam Speaker, I rise to ask this Honourable House to suspend Standing Orders 23, 7 and 8 so that the House business questions can be taken after the hour of 11 o'clock. Thank you.
Question is that Standing Order 23 be suspended to allow questions to be asked after the hour of 11 a.m. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it.
The elected member for Georgetown North to ask the Honourable Minister of District Administration and Lands, question number 8.
The elected member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to ask the question number 8 in my name to the Honourable Minister of District Administration and Lands. And the question reads, can the Honourable Minister advise what is being done to resolve the vending occurring on the public beach?
The Honorable Minister of District Administration and Lands.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The answer. Madam Speaker, I take it that the honourable member is referring to the 7 Mile Public Beach. The Public Lands Commission has prepared a policy that could be adopted to allow for the granting of some permits to vendors at this location in accordance with the Public Lands Regulation 2021. The policy is under active consideration by caucus and cabinet at this time, as well as the overriding principle of whether or not to permit any vending at this location.
Are there any supplementary questions?
The elected member for Georgetown North to ask the Honourable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure. Question number 9.
The elected member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to ask question number 9 in my name to the Honourable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure. And the question reads, can the Honourable Minister provide an update on the Niels Godfrey Park upgrades, including a bathroom block?
The Honourable Minister of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
Madam Speaker, no funding has been assigned to this project during the current budget period of 22 to 23.
Are there any supplementary questions?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank the Honourable Member for that answer. The last time I inquired about this park and the bathroom blocks, I was told that the project manager was getting quotes, etc., or they were out to tender. Can the Honourable Minister then say whether or not they are in a position to budget for this in the 2023-24 budget?
Minister of Planning.
Madam Speaker, the Minister for Georgetown North is correct. We were looking at getting some quotes to figure out what it was going to cost. And as soon as I have that cost, maybe I can actually see whether it's something that we can, looking forward to put into the next sitting of the budget.
Member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Honourable Member for his consideration. Madam Speaker, through you, I just say to the Honourable Member and to this House that the Niels Godfrey Park was donated by Mr. Niels Godfrey, known to us all. It is in the heart of the Washington Boulevard area, commonly known as the Swamp. The park is used quite often and by the people of that community. It's not shared, it's not overcrowded with everyone else. The people of that particular community use the park on a regular basis. In fact, we will be having a Christmas party there next week, but there's no restrooms, facilities there, and the park is a bit worn, a bit old, and we would really appreciate, and I know the people in that area are looking forward to it and would really appreciate some consideration in those upgrades.
Honourable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, yes, I agree with the Honourable Minister, the leader, Deputy Leader. I, this week, actually had the opportunity to actually go down into that area to take a look at the park, and I actually walked over there. So I do agree with him that it needs to have some work done over there, and that's when we were actually looking in to see what we can to put forward to make sure that we can deliver for the people in that area on safe community park. I know a lot of them actually came out and spoken to me about it, and they made suggestions about it. So I just want to let the member know that I take all his concerns about it, and the member and the people in the area that spoke to me also about it, and we'll be looking into it to see what we can do for the next financial quarter, sir. No.
Madam Speaker, can
Member
I
for Westby.
ask the minister on the public beach that is by the governors being used by many people, including tourists? A toilet facility is badly needed, and inclusive of course, if government does anything, it would need to be managed, taken care of properly. But tons of tourists go there, and I know I'm being a bit longer than I want to be, but I need to say that tons of tourists go there. I think several members of this House know about it, and women have nowhere to go. So I'm wondering and asking if that is not yet in the plan, that they do put it in the plan, but more than that, find funds to do something immediately, because it is used by tourists there.
The Honorable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, just to let the colleague from West Bay know that we are actually, and the last time we were in the House, that question came up about those beaches having restrooms, and we are actually in the process of going through that right now to be able to bring that to Cabinet very shortly, of looking to build these restrooms on a few of the other public beaches, including looking at the South Sound dock was also one of them. So I think in total was 3 beaches and Prospect also, as I've been reminded here very shortly.
The Honorable Minister for Tourism and Transport.
Madam Speaker, I rise to add some context to the question that was posed by the Honourable Member for West Bay West, to say that publicly we have said that we are in the preliminary stages of discussion about the relocation of the governor's residence. And as the Minister for Tourism, the property would be something of attraction for where Caymanians can offer the necessary skill sets to tourists, and also offer an opportunity for a bathroom location rather than building one on the beach side. If we are able to move forward with those visions and plans of the relocation of the governor's residence, then that resident location would be more ideal location to have an outside facility, while at the same time offering some other factors there within the structure from a historical perspective. So I want the Honourable House to take that in context as to whether or not the government decides to build a bathroom on just the beach side next to the governor's house, because I've brought the matter to the attention of my colleagues, and I think that we can fairly say there is preliminary support. It's about taking the necessary business case analysis, finding a new location. As we all know, we're going to transition to a new governor soon, so it will be important for the new governor to know that there will be a transition throughout the period of their tenure in the Cayman Islands.
Madam Speaker, the member would have no trouble with me about moving the governor wherever they can find an appropriate place, because that's been talked about for years. But that takes time, and that toilet situation, however they locate it, I don't think you could put it right in front of the governor's house, but you would put it somewhere about where it can be utilized properly, because it is a fact. I've been there because I've been invited to be there to see what happens. Women have nowhere to go, especially. Bad enough for everybody, but especially women, and especially our visitors that go there and don't have a toilet facility. So I hope that that plan that both of the ministers just announced will move quickly, because it is, to me, it's an emergency.
Honorable Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Madam Speaker, thank you for your indulgence. Just a quick comment. The restroom, the new restroom block at the 7 Mile Public Beach, I'm not sure who is responsible for building that, but there's absolutely zero ventilation in the bathrooms. There's no windows, nothing. It gets extremely hot during the summer, and people have had incidents in there. And there's also nowhere for persons to wash their feet off, and that bathroom is right where they get onto the buses. So they actually put their feet in the basins, and then the Parks and Recreation staff that clean the place then have to get all of the sand out of the basin. I suspect you will have plumbing issues in the near future because of the amount of sand going into the basin. So just something for consideration in the future blocks that are being done.
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Madam Speaker, I just rise to take on the considerations that the elected member just mentioned on the bathroom block, but just the one to bring attention that that was not, if it is a new block, it was not done under our tenure. It was under somebody else before we got there, but we have no problem of doing what we have to do to fix that problem, resolve that.
The elected member for Georgetown East to ask the Honourable Minister of Tourism and Transport, question number 10.
The elected member for Georgetown East. Sorry, the Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to ask questions number 9, standing in my name, to the Honourable Minister of Tourism and Transport. Can the Honourable Minister update the House on the year-to-date numbers for stayover and cruise tourism, as well as the updated estimates for 2023?
The Honourable Minister for Tourism and Transport.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The answer. The year-to-date. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The answer. The year-to-date arrivals are as follows. For the period of the 1st of January 2022 to the 31st of October 2022, stayover arrivals amounted to 202,230 persons. This equates to 49% of the visitor arrivals for the corresponding period of 2019. In respect to cruise passenger arrivals total to 509,205 passengers. This represents 35% of the cruise passenger arrivals recorded in 2019. Madam Speaker, in respect to the estimated projections for 2023, the Ministry of Tourism has established a target of 70% of the 2019 visitor arrivals, which equates to 351,917 stayover visitors. For 2023, cruise passenger arrivals are forecasted to be at 1.46 million passengers. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wonder if the Minister could tell us, just looking through the data, particularly with regard to the forecast for cruise passengers for 2023, forecasting 1.46 million visitors. That's roughly, if I try to project through to the end of this year for cruise passengers, it looks like there will be at least, or pretty close to a doubling of arrivals next year from where we are likely to end up in 2022. But I noticed, I recall just recently there was a story in the press with regard to the cruise ship companies that they will not tender their largest class vessels, and we're forecasting that arrivals to be somewhere in the region of around maybe 750, 700 some odd thousand visitors next year. Am I getting this wrong? But I'm just wondering, in terms of additional capacity that's likely to come online next year in order to allow for the numbers to get where we are projecting them to be.
Honorable Minister for Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I thank the Honorable Leader of Opposition for the question to give clarity to the industry as to the projections for next year. The member is correct to say that there were some publications as to a decline in the numbers of cruise passengers due to the two major cruise lines, Disney and Royal, deciding not to do some of their ships stopping in Grand Cayman. As a result, there is a projection of just over 25% drop in the 2019 numbers, which ultimately means that we would have 75% of the 2019 numbers, because 2019 is the benchmark that we're using, which the Honorable former Minister did a great job in having that threshold that high. So that's the mark that we're using. We still believe we will be able to meet the revenue targets and the passenger targets in respect to next year's budgeted projections. Hopefully that answers the member's question. It is concerning as the numbers are projected to also in 2024 do similar reductions due to the fact of a lack of pier offerings for these mega ships, where they have said they cannot tender those ships. We are working very hard within the ministry and the Department of Tourism to ensure that we work on and with the partners within the cruise line industry, with the smaller ships, to see if we can increase those stops at Grand Cayman Port. Now, we have already seen where the smaller class ships, like the Holland America, has added 3 stops to their amount that they have done in 2019. But 3 stops in comparison to a 20-ship stop reduction from a Royal or a Carnival is a substantial difference. But we still are going to make our mark. And I'm happy to also say that the 2023 projections for stayover, with the ADR rate being much higher, that we will surpass our projections, or we hope to surpass our projections from the revenue perspective as well as the stayover perspective, to make up for any shortfalls if we did have any. But I don't expect to have any shortfalls in that respect. But we are working closely, and I'm happy to say that I've had conversations with the former minister, who will be working together just from a correspondence perspective on what's best ways to attack this problem, not making tourism being a political football, because we're all in this together. It's a major pillar of our economy, and try to figure out ways to incentivize the cruise lines to continue and not go too far down this line of stopping the amount of stoppage by each cruise line. So we are aware of the decision by some of the lines to make reductions due to transitioning to the bigger ships, but that is something that has been decided by the people that they don't want a pier, and we are respecting the people's wish in that respect, and as a result, we will do our best with whatever is available to us and continue to support, market, and encourage and incentivize cruise lines to stop at the Grand Cayman Port.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I wonder if the Minister could let us know, recognizing I think probably all of the North American carriers have returned to Cayman at this time. Could the Minister tell us whether they have returned or reinstated all of the frequencies with regard to the routes that they are flying?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In respect to the question posed by the Leader of Opposition, the frequency isn't exactly back to where it was supposed to be in 2019.
but our expectations are in the first quarter of next year that we will get back to those frequencies. As the Leader of Opposition may be aware, there's still the aviation industry is still grappling with the shortage of pilots. You can see some destinations, some airlines are slowly ramping back up, and that is based on the routes that are most successful for them. For example, as Cayman became more and more attractive as a place to want to fly to based on Expedia and the travel online options, they keep an eye on those data points and see that there's a demand for certain places. So with the limited resources of pilots that they have, they choose the most successful routes that they can fly and fold the plane the most. Now, they do that in brackets by way of a 3 to 4 month bracket, and then they'll do another schedule based on seasons. The former minister would know this. And as a result, when we first opened, because we opened so late in August, they had already created their bracket with the availability of pilots that they did have at that time. I'm happy to say that they have all given indications that they, matter of fact, intend to surpass, based on the high demand for Cayman, the number of flights into the jurisdiction. I'm also happy to announce that Sun Country will be coming back to Cayman very soon, and I will be offering a statement later next week as to an update of the state of play within the tourism industry, which will relate to aviation and cruise, to give a clearer picture with the most updated information in that respect.
The Honorable Deputy Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, earlier I had mentioned about the tourism accommodation tax being $2.4 million ahead of budget year to date, despite the late start. Can the Minister provide briefly, in the grand scheme of these numbers, how Cayman Airways has been performing, and in particular, I'd like to get an update on the LAX route, how that has been performing. Thank you.
Honorable Minister for Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the Honorable Deputy Premier for asking the question. I had intended to give all of this information in a statement later on, but it's always good to double down with emphasis, because there's still more information that I'm proud to let the public know next week. In respect to the question that was posed, Cayman Airways is doing amazing. We've had a record history month in October where we've had the highest number of sales in the company's history. One that I am so proud of the managing staff and the board over there for working really hard to get the national airline back up and running and making as much profits as possible within the remit of its responsibilities. Because though we know the Cayman Airways makes a loss heavily because we subsidize it on the basis of our routes to our sister islands, which is very important to us, it's good to know that they are making some good money, particularly based on the number of seats in October. We have been able to, as a result, give the civil service 2% that was offered to the 2% that was offered to the civil service was also awarded to the Cayman Airways staff, and the $150 for 3 months of July, August, and September. I intend to bring another paper that will bring Cayman Airways in line with the Public Authorities Law to allow the staff to be at the same salary scale as the civil service in their respective roles, to make sure to increase the salaries for the staff at Cayman Airways, which I do believe they're overdue for that, particularly for the stewardess that were dealing with COVID and the fears of COVID, and we're still servicing trade and leisure and business travel when no other airline other than Cayman Airways and British Airways were flying. So I can't wait to get that paper approved, and even if we don't get it approved in time for Christmas, it will be retroactive for the 1st of December of this month. The second part of your question, Yes, Madam Speaker, the LAX update, I'm happy to say that we're steadily going at a rate of just under 70%, which is expected due to the fact that there was a small budget for marketing. The LAX zone is a very expensive market. The budget that was proposed to us to be confident on its success was very high, one that we could not at the time justify with all the difficulties that were going on. But we found unique ways to partner with stakeholders like Cayman Finance, like the film industry, and obviously our tourism partners like the hoteliers and so forth to work together to find the same level of volume of exposure and marketing and the Cayman local travel component of Caymanians who want to go to the West Coast. With that, we're seeing a good steady flow up into the first quarter of next year, my apologies. And it is my intention that if things continue to go down the road that it is, and we are in a better financial position, that I can go back to my colleagues and say, now that things are doing a little bit better, can we award the Department of Tourism the necessary funds to make sure we maintain the exposure necessary for Cayman Airways to be relevant in that very expensive market? But we have seen indications within the industry that it's bound to be very successful for the full year, and potentially even going into another flight, another day of the week. So ultimately offering 2 flights per week. Madam Speaker, I think that answers the 2 questions that were posed to me by the Honourable Deputy Premier.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wonder if the Minister could let us know. He mentioned, such a record or banner month of October, best in the company's history. Just wonder if he could give us the reasons or what were the factors that contributed to such success in October.
The Honourable Minister for Tourism.
Madam Speaker, I'm happy to give that detailed information to the member in writing, but I can make sure I can give you the assumption that people just want to fly in and out of Cayman Islands on our national airline.
The Honourable, the member for Cayman Brac East.
Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman.
I'm sorry.
But
I'm so sorry.
happy to work with my colleague in East as well. Madam Speaker, first I would like to congratulate the Minister of Tourism on being awarded this year the Minister of Tourism for the region. I told him yesterday that I was very proud. He follows in my footsteps as being the Minister of Tourism for the region as well. But in our conversation, what we made sure to understand was that the support and the team that backs you up is extremely important, and the recognition of Cayman and the Cayman Islands, Cayman Brac, and Little Cayman, of how we do business and how we operate our tourism, I think is recognized through that award. And I'm sure every colleague of yours in this House is very happy and very proud. Now, with those pleasantries, Madam Speaker, I have a couple questions, and I'll start off with the one on cruise. Not too long ago, there was a report that was brought by yourself or asked to be prepared on a cruise policy. Can you update us on when that'll be available, or if there have you got any input from where they are in that report?
Honourable Minister for Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. To answer the question to the Honourable Member from Cayman Brac East, my apologies, Cayman Brac West, and I know he's not from Sport Bay, so I should know better than that. The report that he's referring to was a review on the cruise tourism and transport that was requested by myself. Madam Speaker, we have split the two reports and separated the transport one, which I think the honourable member may be aware that is currently in process with the firm Deloitte. And I hope to have that report back in the first quarter of next year, hopefully by the first or second week of February, to update the public and this honourable House in respect to its findings. The other part was to figure out the best balanced number and figure for cruise on the basis that the people of the Cayman Islands found that the cruise numbers were too much and it had the negative effects on the environment by way of traffic, usage of our natural environments like Stingray City and our beaches and so forth. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, we don't have that issue anymore due to what I have highlighted earlier, where there is a projected reduction, unfortunately, in the heavy amounts of between 20 to 25% for next year and potentially over 25% for 2024, which caused much of the reason for the report in the first place to better balance out what is the exact amount that is healthy for our community, where people can make money and it's not too heavily on our industry, our environment, I should say, and it is sustainable. Now we're at the point where we're trying to actually just not go any further lower than the numbers that are projected for next year and the year after. So the review that was going to be done, I've put a hold on that because the relevance of solving that problem is not as top of a priority now. Now it's about the numbers that we're getting. I wouldn't say they're good enough. I just know that they're not causing the problems that were the ignition to the report in the first place. So to spend, $100,000 on a report where the problem itself is no longer a problem, it didn't make valuable sense. So that's on hold. I am, as I said to the member in private, trying to find out strategic ways of balancing out the cruise industry and use our leverage where we can to encourage cruise lines to come on the slower months, knowing that they want to be here on the peak months. And those negotiations, I'm happy to say that the Honourable former Minister has agreed to work with me on finding that best strategy. It is nothing wrong with taking leadership from good, wise former members who have the experience in it. Ultimately, our goal is to ensure that the cruise industry is sustainable and maintained. Is there a real fear of loss of business for cruise? Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, I have to say yes. The question about whether a pier was supposed to be built or not, I know for certain is now probably being rethought by some members of our community, because we're starting to see the realities of that, what was perceived at the time a scare tactic of reduction of numbers. And the simple truth, Madam Speaker, is that perceived scare tactic is now a reality, as for next year we'll get close to 25% loss in the numbers from 2019. So, Madam Speaker, I know it's not the best news in the world, but I always want to be honest with the people of this country and the reality, and we can decide what we want to do with that. I have been investigating different strategies to increase the numbers by focusing on our sister islands. This Honourable House and the members of the public may be aware of a major development by a huge investor in our community for Cayman with a project called Zeus. Project Zeus. And there is great opportunities within that project layout that, if is successful and implemented, I've already gotten commitments, preliminary commitments from cruise lines who will be willing to stop in Cayman Brac if that project follows through. I'm looking forward to having a meeting in Cayman Brac in the early part of next year with the blessings of both members that represent the Cayman Brac to talk to the Cayman Brac people about further investing in tourism in the Sister Islands. The reason I say that, Madam Speaker, is because the western side of Grand Cayman is fully booked. We have developments in the pipeline that are coming, and once they come online, I think we would have gotten almost to capacity on the West Coast. It's time for us to start looking to the eastern districts and to the Sister Islands. Cayman Brac offers a rather unique product that is totally different than Grand Cayman and totally different from Little Cayman. Cayman Brac offers a unique opportunity by way of it has the necessary infrastructures already in place, as well it offers different products from an adventurous experience. And that's why within our department and within our ministry, we want to start focusing heavily on Cayman Brac. I didn't want to make this announcement earlier, but we've already seen agreements coming down the line where a national flag carrier from the United States will be flying directly into Cayman Brac, as opposed to what is being proposed now, where they have to fly to Grand Cayman and then we service them to Cayman Brac. Cayman Brac has a strong enough infrastructure and people and investment, I think, to be able to carry out its own product. And I hope to get it to that point, as Cayman Brac needs that injection within their own economy. And I believe with the current airport redevelopment in process, we can attract more airlines, as well as that potential for that Zeus project to be completed. Cayman Brac in the next 2 to 3 years could be not having to depend on Grand Cayman at all. And that's exactly where I hope to get Cayman Brac to. So it is my intention, with the blessing of the two members, to go to Cayman Brac and talk to the Cayman Brac people about being willing to receive that forward movement, because only with the blessings and the want and the acceptance by the people of Cayman Brac can that be successful.
The elected member for Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I thank the Minister for the response, and I believe the answer on the cruise policy report is that it's been stopped. Okay. There was a lot of good news there. I believe that's American Airlines that is looking into the direct flight. I have a couple other questions. The Zeus project, which I am in favor of, can you tell me when that'll be approved by your caucus, your cabinet, to go forward?
Honorable Minister for Tourism.
Madam Speaker, the answer, I can't say that because I am not privy to the details, as it doesn't fall within my ministry. But I can ensure to get those details before you. I haven't seen it on the agenda before caucus, but just to confirm that I am also in support of that project, but it's for the whole caucus together, as per where our authority lies, because though we can have a say on whether we support it, it doesn't necessarily mean we have any say in whether it happens moving forward or not. They're a private developer. Once they meet the laws of the Cayman Islands in respect to it from an environmental and planning perspective, I don't think it's, and I reservedly say this, but it's our place to intervene into that unless they're asking something from the government. And as far as I'm aware, the investor has not asked the government specifically for anything, so therefore we don't need to be involved. But I would like to announce my support for it, and I'm hoping that other members would see the benefit for Cayman Brac from a tourism and food security port perspective, because what is being offered there, based on what I've heard from the developer themselves, is there is a component where cargo will be facilitated, which, as the Honourable House is aware, the Port Authority falls under my remit as well. And I've asked the Port Authority to meet with the developers to see where the benefit is to the imports to the Cayman Islands can benefit. And the preliminary response is that the Port Authority management team is in support of it as well. So it gives more security for the Cayman Brac people for food importation, because you know we've heard so many times where Cayman Brac can't get food because of the weather being bad. This would eliminate that potential problem.
Elected member for Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, again, I thank the Minister for the response. Thank him for his support for the Zeus project, and again, agreed with him from what I have been told, reliably informed, is that what is being waited on is permission from government for him to move forward. So thank you for how you outlined that. Madam Speaker, he talked about the development of tourism for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. I want to make sure that he's aware that nothing can happen in those two islands until we get proper airlift. And we are struggling with the capital to get proper airlift right now. Little Cayman can't go any farther. I'm sure you're aware that the plane that services the two planes, they have now come back and removed some of the seats. So what started off with a Twin Otter that carried 18 passengers is now down to 12 passengers. So that's what that small island, our small island, is facing. The airlift into Cayman Brac was structured with 234 seaters for frequency. But their pilot shortage, schedule changes, they're not able to run and put the seats in place in the timely manner that's needed. So I ask you to put that on an important part of your list of the only way we can move forward is with the support and the improvement of the schedule from Cayman Airways into the Brac and Little Cayman.
Madam Speaker, I do apologize for cutting the member short, but I think you'd be happy that I did. I am happy to announce that the ministry is bringing a paper to Cabinet, to caucus, to get support to purchase another Twin Otter to facilitate this problem. It has been brought to my attention that the situation is dire by way of what you have highlighted in respect to maintenance schedules, and God forbid if we had one small problem with the one that is currently working while the maintenance for the other one is happening, it puts us in a very difficult place, one that affects our tourism brand heavily. And I give you an example which I am certain that you're aware, where we had that exact problem, a small minor warning, as you know, for the protocols. If there's any warnings, the plane has to be grounded. And as a result, we had a large contingent of visitors who had to leave Cayman Brac in order for them to catch their flight to the Northern American market. And as a result, there had to be boats driven to Little Cayman to pick them up, to carry them to Cayman Brac, to get them on a jet flight, to get them out. And the experiences of that leave a lasting negative impression with the customers. We have the highest return visitor percentage in the Caribbean of 46%, and little stuff like that can affect the return rate, which keeps our sustainable tourism product over the decades to come when I'm probably not here. So we are mindful of that. I've spoken to the Honourable Premier, who's given me the preliminary support, and I'm certain that I've also spoke to the Deputy Premier in respect to getting that as a capital injection, equity injection, which will not hurt the government's bottom line. So it's practically already approved, so to speak. I think I'm confident to say that my colleagues will give me the support in that. It's just a matter of the Parliament's proceedings why the paper hasn't been brought. But my team at Cayman Airways have already been told to start the preparations for looking for purchase. You are also aware, based on your former experience, that these twin autos keep their value. So it's a good thing to buy, because even if we switched over to a different type of plane in the next year or two, they can be sold at a drop of a hat. So it's an easy decision to make, and I look forward to being able to announce that soon for you.
I'll allow one final supplemental, the Honorable Deputy Premier.
No, not a final supplementary, Madam Speaker, but just to expand, I recognize the question from the Honorable Member from Cayman Brac, West and Little Cayman, adventured in the domain of economic development. And what I want to put on the economic development portion of the Finance and Economic Development Ministry, what I can say to the Honorable Member and to colleagues in this House is that the government recognizes that there are certain infrastructural development that also needs to be done or undertaken in Cayman Brac to allow it to arrive at its full potential. And with the support of the Minister of Education, District Admin and Land, who's also the member for Cayman Brac East, she actually brought a paper which was actually approved, that we basically look at increasing the accommodations within Cayman Brac itself, because in order for Cayman Brac to have major capital projects, there is an issue with housing for workers on the island. And what we have found is that is either if people leave from Grand Cayman to go do major works in Cayman Brac, and you do need a good crew in order for major capital development, they will end up eating the entire tourism room stock in Cayman Brac, which would then, in essence, set it back. So the government is actually, as approved in principle, the funding to actually expand housing within Cayman Brac for multi-use, different purposes. And again, I want to thank the Minister for Education for bringing that, so we can actually now have the facilities in place that can actually house large amount of workers, because it also drives up the cost if people have to go back and forth between Grand Cayman and Cayman Brac in terms of construction costs in the Brac already with all these inflationary pressures. So the government is actually looking at its own economic development plan for Cayman Brac to make sure it does achieve its full potential. We think it's high time now that Cayman Brac has the opportunity and the infrastructure in place to actually achieve its full potential. The people of Cayman Brac is no different from anyone else in the Cayman Islands, and just as though me as a member from the Eastern District would want development within the Eastern Districts to also diversify our entire product, there's renewed emphasis in Cayman Brac in that regard. So the member would be pleased to know that this is additional funding, millions of dollars that we have also set aside now separately to allow other major projects in Cayman Brac. The government itself struggles in terms of our own capital development in Cayman Brac again, and the cost goes up by having workers traveling back and forth. So in addition, as the Minister may have mentioned, we were looking at an additional, more larger seat of planes and get more traffic into Cayman Brac. I think that is something that we should be aware, but I think at a later date, a lot of those stuff will be revealed in its fullness to give everyone, but it is something that we are consciously working on.
Honorable elected member for Cayman Brac West and Little Cayman, just one final question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I understand it's the final question, but thank you for allowing me to ask one more. Very good news. Obviously, congratulations to my colleague from Cayman Brac East for the paper that was just explained. We were looking at changing out the sobs. So I know it's Christmas, and we've certainly had a lot of good gifts here in the last 30 minutes. I would ask the minister and the government to also look into changing out the sobs. We had looked at the ATR and the dashes, the 50 to 60 seaters, to look for that scheduling and continue with the improvement of the air schedule for Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. Because again, as we all agree, if we don't sort out the lift problem, it doesn't make any sense to invest the millions that you have just talked about. So thank you very much.
Honorable Minister for Tourism. Thank
you, Madam Speaker, and I know you want to wrap up this area of the order paper, so I'll try to be as quick as I possibly can. The former minister will be aware that we currently operate 3 different types of planes, and which causes us to have a number of expenses at Cayman Airways. 3 different maintenance crew, 3 different types of parts, and ideally for the type of offerings that we have for long distances and short distances, we ideally only need 2 types of aircrafts. And I think that's what the member was trying to say. How do we get there? It also depends upon what the good people of Little Cayman want, because we have had some feedback by way of the airport redevelopment, and the team that is putting together this report for us to look at for the updated airport plan have gone and talked to the people of Cayman Brac, Little Cayman, and they have said that they don't want much changed. So that balance of economic growth and the will of the people is one that it is important to try to set the right way. And one thing we are committed to in respect to the Little Cayman model, which is what is holding up the potential for us to just go to 2 types of planes, is the airport. What I can happily say is that the government is minded to try to resolve the problem of the airport in Little Cayman, so that if we have an updated airport in Little Cayman, we can move to more reliable flights in, and also potentially go down to just 2 types of planes, whereby obviously the fleet that we have now of the 737-8 Maxes is one for sure. What we will go into then for these short flights to and from Little Cayman and Cayman Brac to Grand Cayman and within the 3 islands can be determined after we get to that point. But I agree that it makes more feasible financial sense to focus on something that is not that carries a larger amount, so we can facilitate the tourism visitors into those markets in a more reliable way. So I want the member to know that I'm aware of it, and I'm happy to speak more with him privately about this, as he is not only the former Minister of Tourism, but also in the tourism industry, as well as the representative for the Sister Islands, along with our Minister of Education. So the wealth of knowledge that is there within his mind is something I'm happy to receive and take guidance from to help develop the best product forward for Cayman Brac, Little Cayman, and the Cayman Islands.
Statements by honorable ministers and members of the cabinet.
None.
Personal explanations.
I've given leave to the Honorable Deputy Governor to give a personal explanation.
Madam Speaker, thank you. Madam Speaker, just over 3 weeks ago, while at the gym, I suffered what the doctors diagnosed as a micro heart attack or a minor heart attack. Madam Speaker, I have to say it did not feel like a minor heart attack. Persons describe a heart attack like having an elephant sit on your chest. Truthfully, it felt worse than that. Madam Speaker, I was lucky. Thanks to the quick and capable actions of the medical professionals at the HSA and Doctors Hospital, and with the grace of God, my condition was quickly diagnosed and I was provided with world-class care, which allowed me to return to work yesterday. Madam Speaker, 12 years ago, I made a decision to live a healthier lifestyle. I walk regularly, attend the gym, I try and stay away from unhealthy food and drink. I do not smoke or drink alcohol. I believe these actions saved my life. However, I have not been as consistent as I should be with living a healthier lifestyle. Madam Speaker, I did not pay attention to my blood pressure or get regular checkups. Madam Speaker, I take this opportunity to once again to urge members of our community to pay attention to their health. Don't wait for a heart condition to occur before you take preventative action. Madam Speaker, we as a community need to eat more healthy food on a regular basis. Choose a diet of vegetables, fruit, and lean meats, and stay away from fried and fatty foods. Madam Speaker, regular exercise is critical to good health. Madam Speaker, when I talk to persons about the importance of regular exercise that increases your heart rate, I often hear that familiar response, I don't have time to exercise. Madam Speaker, I think we can all really find the time to exercise. A 45-minute walk in the morning before work or after work and can be done if we really, really want to. If you live in the Eastern Districts and you spend an hour in traffic at 5 p.m., why not bring your exercise close to work and walk for an hour after work? Take part in the many 5K charities that usually take place on Sunday mornings. Madam Speaker, I will redouble my efforts to live a healthy lifestyle. I will work with the Ministry of Health and Wellness and the Heart Fund and other charities to promote good health. As leaders of our beloved islands, let us lead by example. I recommend that Cabinet and Parliament offer one healthy meal option to members and that we take part in regular exercise and get regular checkups on physicals. And I know the Deputy Premier has been working with his team about obtaining physical checkups for civil servants, and I want to record my thanks to him for his leadership in this regard. I also ask that the community join in this initiative so that we can all enjoy a long and healthy life. Madam Speaker, I wish to offer a heartfelt thank you to the many hundreds of persons who offered their well wishes and prayed for my recovery. I was extremely touched by the outpouring of care and concern, especially from the civil service who I have the honor to lead. I want my fellow civil servants to know that I felt your love and support, and it was so good to be back to work yesterday. Madam Speaker, a special thank you to His Excellency the Governor for his strong support and care for my recovery. Thanks also to the Premier and Cabinet colleagues for their prayers and support. Madam Speaker, I want to also offer and record my profound thanks to my senior leadership team, especially Chief Officer Gloria McField-Nixon, who did an outstanding job acting during my absence. Madam Speaker, special thanks to my family, especially my wife Nuvia, for her love and support. And she confiscated my phone and forced me to really switch off and focus on my recovery, and that has really, really helped me. Finally, Madam Speaker, I give thanks to God for his mercies and blessings. I thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Governor. I, along with the members here on the government and opposition, along with all of the staff here at Parliament, are happy to have you here with us today in good health. Thanks be to God. I have also given leave to the Honourable Deputy Premier to give a personal explanation.
Madam Speaker, thank you very much. I am glad that my colleague from Cayman Brac, West and Little Cayman had raised this issue. I was recognizing, Madam Speaker, and I don't need to say this to members of this Honourable House, that politics itself can be quite a dark business, and that sometimes what it is that we deal with on a daily basis, some members of the public will never understand, and that's fine. But there are times, Madam Speaker, where there's certain light, and I really and truly want to actually use this opportunity to publicly congratulate my colleague and my brother in the struggle, the Minister for Tourism and Transport, and the elected member for Georgetown Central. Madam Speaker, when I read this article that was in the Caribbean Journal that reads the Caribbean Travel Awards 2023, and it says, Caribbean Tourism Minister of the Year, Kenneth Bryan, Cayman Islands, I was deeply moved and proud. And the article reads, Madam Speaker, the Cayman Islands is already near its pre-pandemic tourism totals, a rather impressive feat since the destination was one of the final Caribbean destinations to reopen for tourism after the onset of the pandemic. Leading the destination's rebirth has been Minister Bryan, who skillfully navigated the balance of public health and the economy and definitely led Cayman's phased reopening process. Now Cayman is on the cusp of eclipsing its all-time records in 2023 with focus, sustainability-minded growth, push spearheaded by its top tourism official. Madam Speaker, the reason why this actually moved me on a personal level, why I have to get up and say this in the House. There are many nights when Minister Bryan and myself, as newly elected members sitting in opposition, would be up till 12, 1 o'clock at night talking, planning, and looking at ways in which we can make this country better. And I remember the night we were out his yard, leaned up on the back of his truck, and we were talking about tourism and where we like to see it go. And we discussed things like expanding to the LAX route, looking at opportunities in South America and everything else. And the passion and the zeal that Minister Bryan has brought, and every time I'd call him, he would always say, well, big brother or whatever. I can honestly see, as I guess the big brother in this regard, to see where he has come and where he has moved. And while in politics, and again, I really want to thank the honorable member from Cayman Brac, Western Little Cayman, for bringing it up. It really makes me proud. And to be elected chairman of the Caribbean Tourism Organization, and this in a short time, goes well for Cayman. Kenneth, respect.
Obituary and other ceremonial speeches.
None.
Raise it a matter of privileges.
None. I was going to say that before we go into any of the other business, that we suspend for lunch. Before we take a suspension, I want to advise members that the children from the East End Primary School, they love their MP so much that they have reached out and asked for permission to join all members at the steps of the front of Parliament at 1:30 to sing Christmas carols for the members of Parliament. So just inviting everyone to come out to the front steps to enjoy the Christmas carols sung by our students. We've now reached the hour of 12:40. The House will now suspend for lunch until 2 p.m. Just to be clear, the students will be outside at 1:30.